Reasons I like it is because it saves people money. Being in financial services, very passionate about the ability for people to keep their money, earn money, grow their money, and 1031 is a means of doing that.
Good morning. My name's Dallas Seeley. I'm the founder and owner of the Seeley Group, one of the top-ranked real estate brokerages in the entire country. And as you can see behind me here with this super cool backdrop, we're here at the world-famous Barton Creek Country Club, my home away from home. And we've got a really cool interview today with the definitive 1031 exchange real estate expert in the entire state of Texas, Mr. Carl Pikus. You see, myself and my team over the past several years have worked with hundreds and hundreds of investors, and a vast majority of them always need help with a 1031 exchange. When you work with the Seeley Group, we're going to bring the best of the best. You're basically getting an army of experts in their fields that's going to be serving you and your family at the highest level. So I'm excited. Are you excited? Here we go. So you are what we would call a 20-year overnight success.
Yeah, I would say that. Actually, it's more like 40, but somehow I've made it to this. 1031 has been with us. It's been a part of the IRS code since 1921. Then we can defer the taxes because I didn't take your money and you didn't take my money.
Love, love, love the fact you're taking us back to the origins. In the early 20s, the government imposed this new federal tax. Good morning. I'm Dallas Seeley, founder and owner of the Seeley Group here, and I am here with the one and only definitive 1031 legend here of Central Texas and 1031 exchanges, Carl Pikus of IPX 1031 Exchange. I'll give a big round of applause. Golf clap right here. Very appropriate with the trophies here. So, first and foremost, Carl, thank you for allowing us to be at your club today. I thought it's a super cool backdrop, kind of switching things up. And Carl and I, we've known each other. I met you back in 2014 or 2015. First time, is that correct?
Yeah, about that time. 10 years ago, roughly.
Yeah. So kind of little history and a little education for the viewers at home. How did you get into 1031 exchanges? How long have you been helping people with this investment avenue? And what's the number one thing that you love about what you do?
How long? 20 years. Started with wholesaling REITs, DSTs for a company called Inland. And in the process of selling or presenting DSTs, Delaware Statutory Trusts, inevitably were involved with 1031 exchanges. So I had to learn how 1031 exchanges worked as I began to explain the benefits of DSTs to various investors. And in that time, I got to know various qualified intermediaries, 1031 facilitators, and ultimately work with the best. My current boss, his name is Craig Brown. He's up in Dallas, works for IPX 1031. And when it was time to get off the road and stop wholesaling, I approached him. I said, look, can I be a qualified intermediary? And he said, yeah, sure. You kind of know what you're doing. And that was about 10 years ago. And that has worked out very well. Reasons I like it is because it saves people money. Being in financial services, very passionate about the ability for people to keep their money, earn money, grow their money, and 1031 is a means of doing that.
Awesome. So you are what we would call a 20-year overnight success.
Yeah, I would say that. Actually, it's more like 40, but somehow I made it to this point.
That's good.
In spite of myself.
So I normally don't do this, but I want to ensure that we hit every single basis on today's video. I want to ensure that we bring as much value as possible, whether this is your first time investing and you're just learning about 1031 exchanges and maybe you're just on your first or second, or this is your 10th, 15th, 30th plus, and you are seeking out the best of the best. I want to make sure that we hit every single angle today with the definitive 1031 expert, Mr. Carl Pikus. So first question for the viewers at home, Carl, what is a 1031 exchange?
1031 exchange is a taxpayer's means to defer taxes on the sale of real property, business or investment property. And if you find yourself in a position of, say, owning a rental house and you've owned it for 10 years and you've seen that appreciation, well, that'll be capital gains tax. That's 15 to 23.8%. 10 years of depreciation is the depreciation recapture tax at 25%. And if after 10 years you begin to add that up and realize, oh my gosh, I've got, $130,000 of taxes. This is literally the one and only means of deferring that, of saving those taxes. And so you need a qualified intermediary upon the sale of your business investment property. And within 6 months, with the help of the QI, the qualified intermediary, you buy new investment property for the same price or higher. That $150,000 tax bill, you can defer that.
So, kind of secondary question, just to break it down even more uh, simple and more clear for especially our more entry level investors. Why would our U.S. government, which let's be honest is a for-profit business, why would they give us the opportunity to defer a massive amount of capital gains taxes?
That's a little complicated because 1031 has been with us. It's been a part of the IRS code since 1921. And in 1921, it began because a couple of years prior to that, to pay for World War I, federal government instituted a capital gains tax. It was only 5%. But if you bought a property for 50 and you sold it for 150, you have a gain of 100. And in that example, you would owe the federal government $5,000. Now, U.S. citizens had no problem with state and local taxes, but that new federal tax, the first time in the country's history, uh, U.S. citizens didn't like that. So they looked at their situation, the tax situation, and said, well, wait a minute. If I sell the property, that'll trigger the tax. So I sell the property and take your money from the sale, that'll trigger the tax. But if I find someone to swap deeds with, if I have a $100,000 farm, you have a $100,000 farm, we go to the closing table and we swap deeds, then we can defer the taxes because I didn't take your money and you didn't take my money, and that triggers the tax. So I can avoid that triggering of the tax by swapping. And the IRS had to acknowledge that, okay, people, because they didn't want to pay the tax. Exactly.
Workaround.
Exactly. Perfectly legal for us to go to the closing table and swap deeds. In my little example, that's a $200,000 transaction. That's perfectly legal. I took your property. You took my property. I didn't take your money. You didn't take my money.
Wow.
Therefore, it's not getting taxed. And the IRS says, oh, okay, well, we don't necessarily like this. We will allow this to occur, but it's a tax deferral because they ultimately want to get back at you.
Yeah.
If later on you sell that property.
So cliff notes of what I
started.
what I just heard. Super cool story. Love, love, love the fact you're taking us back to the origins. In the early 20s, the government imposed this new federal tax. And like most red-blooded Americans that are wearing Lucchese cowboy boots, they're going to be creative and find the workaround. And as soon as Uncle Sam figured out what was going on, they're like, well, I can't legally stop it. However, we're going to also come up with a creative deferral method to make it not as painful up front, but thinking long term as they build wealth through these exchanges at some point in time will not only get the tax payment, but it should be, in theory, greater as we allow them to build wealth through these exchanges.
In theory, yes, unless you just keep exchanging and exchanging. And
Got it.
I'm sure we'll discuss
We will. Okay, question number 2. And I'm sure we're putting it above our heads. The editor is just so we keep things in alignment. Why should someone use, or what is the benefit of a 1031 exchange?
Benefit of the 1031 exchange is your ability to defer the taxes. It's that simple. And again, we're back to business or investment property. And, you're in business, with that property, and it's a tax break that government allows you to defer the sale of that property. I mean, how much money can you gain over time? I mean, if you're exchanging your properties and you're deferring the taxes, wealth by default will be created. I mean, if you on each of your transactions, you don't put yourself 20 to 25% in the hole, Well, the value of your real estate investments is growing almost exponentially because it's not getting taxed.
Right.
So there's no question that your real estate portfolio is going to grow that much faster. Theoretically, if you're buying bigger, better, more expensive properties because they're not getting taxed, theoretically, the rental income from those properties should be that much greater because you're buying bigger, better, more expensive real estate.
Perfect. All right. Question number 3. Who can and who is legally allowed to use a 1031 exchange?
All U.S. citizens. Anyone can use the 1031 section of the code. Again, back to business or investment properties, and that precludes primary residences. And it probably precludes, 95% of the time, secondary residences as well. So we're talking about office, retail, warehouse, apartment, hotel, ranches, farms, rental houses, rental condos, raw land, virtually the entire universe of real estate, as long as it's used for business or investment purposes.
Got it. Perfect. All right. Question number 4. What qualifies as like-kind property?
Business or investment properties, anything that's used for business purposes, where you work. I mean, if you bought a house and you didn't live in it, but you had your office there, that's a business or investment property. Um, uh, Certainly any rental property, raw land, again, raw land, office, retail, warehouse, apartment, hotel, ranches, farms, rental houses, rental condos, they all qualify. We do exchanges on subsets of the dirt, water rights, air rights, mineral rights, that can be exchanged, transferable development rights, timber rights. Again, back to literally the entire universe of real estate, even the subsections of real estate, as long as it's used for business or investment purposes, you can exchange into and out of that.
Beautiful. So my next question, we're watching at home, we're chomping at the bits, we're getting excited. So far, this is really incredible and valuable information for us to build generational wealth over time. My next question, how exactly does the process work?
Well, it typically starts with evaluating your tax situation. You can do it yourself. You can talk to a CPA. If someone calls me and says, "Look, here's my situation. Is this 1031 eligible?" I can't advise them, but I could say, "Well, you've had it for 10 years. You bought it for 100,000. You're selling for 500,000. I mean, right away you've got a gain of 400,000. At 20% tax, that's 80 grand. So, I mean, that would be a conversation to have. Someone would be very, interested in taking a look at that. So that's the first step, recognizing what is your tax hit. And then, the plan of the exchange is you need a qualified intermediary prior to the close of the relinquished property, the property that you're going to sell in exchange. And the exchange process is pretty simple. We would hold the money on behalf of the taxpayer. Taxpayer's got 45 days to identify replacement properties.
Yeah, that's a big one. 45 days.
Yes, it is a big one. 45 days to identify replacement property, 6 months to close. And if you redeploy all the money from the sale into the purchase of the new property or properties, it can be plural. If you redeploy all the money, you'll defer all the taxes.
Okay. So nitty-gritty questions just to make it even more simple. I call you up, I have a conversation with yourself. I'm working with Dallas or my wife or the Sealy Group, right? We have an executive meeting and we decide we're going to move forward on selling this investment property and deferring the capital gains tax through the 1031 exchange. Just for clarification, the 45 days to identify the next property, that starts day 1 after the close of the sale of our current property?
Exactly.
Got it. So step 1, we sell our current property. Step 2, we have 45 days to immediately identify, right? And does that get, where does that get documented? Obviously, we have to kind of keep things legal, official for the 1031 IRS code. Is that something that you do on behalf of the client?
It is. I mean, there's 2 basic things that the QI does. And the exchange will begin with the sale of the relinquished property. Prior to that, 1031 docs have got to be in place. When the seller of the property sells the property, goes to close, they'll sign the 1031 docs. And that's one of the 2 basic things that we provide. The 1031 docs, our company's been doing this for over 30 years. We've done literally hundreds of thousands of exchanges. We do so many exchanges, the IRS audits our paperwork annually. Our paperwork is exactly what the IRS needs to see. It's exactly what they expect to see. So that's the one thing that we do. It's the paperwork. It's complicated. I mean, you could go to a CPA and the CPA would understand the language of this, but wouldn't necessarily know how to put together your docs. Exactly. And then the second thing that we do that's most important is, yes, we hold the money, and it has to be that way. If you're the taxpayer selling this property, if you touch the money, if you don't do an exchange, if you touch the money even for a nanosecond, you're going to get taxed. So you need this independent third party to this transaction. We, the QI, would hold the money on behalf of the client. And when we do, we set up the client's own separate segregated bank account. We use only the large institutional banks, theoretically too big to fail. And then our parent company will insure those accounts. So the accounts are not mixed with anyone else's. It's your own individual account. And then our parent company will add a $100 million fidelity bond from Lloyd's of London, $50 million third-party insurance, $30 million errors and omissions. So your money is safe. And then the 45 days begins, the 180 days, 6 months to close, that begins as well.
So step 3, last clarification, does step 3, the 180 days or 6 months to identify and close on your next process, does that officially tick, or does that start when step 1, you sell your current property, or does that start after the 45-day mark of identifying the next property?
It starts when you sell the property. You have
Okay.
45 days to identify, and the balance of 180 days.
Got it. So step 2 and step 3 actually start at the exact same time, which is the day after you sell the property. Understood.
But this is important, and I know your agents know this. We talk about the exchange beginning at the close, 45 days to identify. That's not really true. Your agents know this. When the property to be sold is under contract, that's when you start shopping. People now take contingency deals. As soon as the property that you sell is under contract, you take that contract, you immediately start shopping. If you can get a contingency deal, fantastic, because anything that you can do prior to day 45 to get the property that you intend to buy under contract, that's what you need to do to be successful.
Beautiful. My next question is, what are the key timelines and deadlines? And I think you just once-we answered all those questions. Okay, so next question, what are the different types of 1031 exchanges?
The one we've been discussing the most is the delayed exchange, easily the most popular, and that's where your taxpayer is selling relinquished property. You need the qualified intermediary to hold the money, 6 months to close on the replacement property. Easily the most popular one. The second most popular one is the reverse exchange, and that's just what it sounds like. It's doing it backwards. The reverse exchange is more complicated. There's more paperwork. It's more expensive, but it's very advantageous for someone who looks at the rules of the regular exchange, the regular delayed exchange, and says, okay, well, I only have 45 days to identify a property. And I'll give you an example. Doc up in Round Rock, this was several years ago, bought medical office in Round Rock 30, 40 years ago when his practice began. He's now in his 60s or 70s looking to retire. He's depreciated that property. Property that he bought for $200,000 is now worth $2.5 million. He's got a massive tax problem. Okay, what does he want to buy? And I know his wife's involved with this because he says, well, we want to buy fabulous condo in Colorado. So he's got to redeploy $2.3 million into fabulous condo in Colorado. Can you do that in 45 days? I mean, we're looking for something very specific, and the answer is maybe not. And then your exchange would fail, and in his example, he'd probably owe $500,000 to the IRS. He doesn't want that. So we discussed the reverse exchange. And the first big question on reverse exchange is, look, if you're going to do this backwards, if you're going to buy your replacement property first, that tells me that you've got the money to buy the replacement property first, meaning obviously the relinquished property hasn't closed yet. You don't have access to those funds. But this guy was a doc, and he had the $3 million to go buy property in Colorado. And whether that takes him 6 days, 6 weeks, or 6 months to buy that property, he can do a reverse exchange. He's got the money to do it, and he's got all the time in the world to find exactly what he wants. And so he gets the Colorado property under contract. We get contacted, and we're going to set up a reverse exchange. We've got to set up reverse exchange docs. We've got to create an LLC on behalf of the doc in this example. And at close, we're going to actually come in and we're going to buy the Colorado property on his behalf. We're going to use an LLC. We're going to create an LLC on his behalf. We will buy Colorado on behalf of the doc. And it has to be that way because he can't buy that property and then sell his property in exchange with themselves. He needs a third party to buy that property. So we buy the property on his behalf. It took him all this time to find it, but he found exactly what he wanted. He bought it on his behalf, and then he's got 6 months to sell his medical office. Sell the medical office within 6 months. That's the taxable event. That money from that sale is used to replace the money that was temporarily given to us. We'll give it back to the doc. We'll give him title to the LLC that we used to buy his property in Colorado. This is complicated. There's no question about it, but it's quite doable. And in the 2 or 3 minutes that I, describe this, there's a lot more information that you would probably need. But the point is, it's out there. And if you've got the money, if you've got the front end money to do this, it can be very advantageous.
So here's what I heard, Cliff Notes. In today's market, especially a commercial property, right? Having it sold in 45 days, is it possible? Yes. Is it feasible? It's, things don't move as quick as they did 2 or 3 years ago during the unicorn heyday of COVID. So if you need more time and you want to work with the seasoned, experienced expert that makes all the complicated as simple as possible, Carl's your guy. There you go. All right. So next question. Talk to me about the pros and cons or concerns of 1031 exchanges.
Well, the pros in terms of the wealth creation, that's obvious, but there's a few other things when you are looking at your business investment properties strictly mathematically. I mean, for instance, if you're a mom and pop and you own a rental property and it's been a tremendous success for you, and you've owned it for 25 years, and you've got great tenants and you've seen the appreciation. But after 25 years and a couple more years, your depreciation tax break is going to run out. That's part of the success financially of, this investment that you've had 25 years, but a couple years, your tax break on depreciation is going to run out. That might drive you to do a 1031 exchange. You need to sell that property. If you sold that property, bought a more expensive property, obviously, you've redeployed all that capital into something else. You've deferred the taxes. But now, since you bought something more expensive, you've got several more years to continue to depreciate it and take advantage of the depreciation tax break. There are other examples of that as well. I mean, if you bought a property at a really good price when the market was low, and over the course of 6, 7, 8 years, you realize that there's been tremendous appreciation on it. And you're confident after, 7, 8 years or so that if you're to sell that property, you'd see that appreciation. That appreciation has been locked into that property. Sell the property and exchange it, take advantage of the tax break, and now you're redeploying all that capital into something bigger, more expensive. Or maybe you split that off and you buy 2 properties. Yeah. And you're gaining that much more income and that much more wealth building by splitting that asset up into 2 assets. So the obvious is the tax break, but you can look at your business plan and realize there's certain situations, certain market conditions that sort of lend itself to making the sale. And if you're going to make the sale, you might as well take advantage of the tax break at 1031.
100% agree. Okay, next question. You've been doing this many, 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 many years. Helped hundreds, if not thousands of clients on this. Ready? What are the top 2 to 3 most common mistakes and pitfalls you've observed over your career?
Oh, the first one is the 45 days. This is where people fail. Setting up the exchange, looking at the math, determining I have a tax problem, I really want to take advantage of doing a 1031 exchange, and my intention is to buy new investment property. You only have 45 days to identify, and the identification rules are pretty simple. On day 45, the IRS demands that you, the taxpayer, give to us, the QI, a list of properties, typically 3 properties. But the catch is this. On day 45, once the list is given, it cannot be changed. You are locked into those properties. And if none of them are under contract, and you can't get them under contract, that exchange will fail. You can't change the list. And so I always tell folks, look, find the property, do anything that you can to get the property. Plan ahead.
So number one, I'm hearing the number one common pitfall is people basically wait till the last minute and they run out of time. And because of that, they don't go by all the check boxes they need to go by.
Right. Or, agents realizing, okay, the relinquished property is under contract. I've got a contract that's going to close in 4 weeks. I should start shopping immediately.
Yeah.
Begin the process of finding that replacement property. Does a couple things. You could make contingency offers, and maybe they don't take them. But the point is, you're in the market. You're out there. You're playing. You're trying to find something.
So that's number one, guys. Don't wait until closing of the first property.
Exactly.
Start. When you work with myself or my team, when we put it on the market, we're already having discussions. We're already talking with the definitive experts. We're bringing in the best of the best, and we are starting the process early. Right?
Exactly. I mean, do a contingency deal before your relinquished property closes. Maybe they don't take it, and then your relinquished property closes. Your funds are in the exchange account. You immediately go back to them. If it hasn't sold yet, you just say, look, forget the contingency offer. Here's the real offer. The money's here. I can close this tomorrow if you'd like.
There's an old Benjamin Franklin quote that comes to mind. By failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail.
Yes.
Perfect. Exactly. So next question for you, Carl. What is some additional advice and some high-level tips that you would give to the viewers now?
It's always the math. It's always the math. Did you do your math? Did you have a pretty good estimate of what your tax hit will be, which drives this? I mean, if you realize that, okay, well, that's a $95,000 tax hit, I don't want to pay that.
Okay.
And then you've got to start looking into the rules of the exchange, the things you need to do to be successful. And we discussed them. The fact that, as soon as the relinquished property goes under contract, you got to shift all your energy into finding the replacement property. The other thing is, back to the math. I have a $95,000 tax hit that I want to defer by completing the exchange successfully. I find an outstanding replacement property. I really, really like it, and I want to buy it. And I don't necessarily want to overpay for it, but my agent tells me we're in a competitive situation, and my agent recommends that I, up my bid up to, maybe $20,000 more. Put it up to $20,000 more. We're probably going to win this. And I've talked to agents about this all the time. The client says, well, I don't want to overpay for it. I'm like, you're not looking at it right.
Yeah.
You want this, you like this. No, I don't want you to overpay for it either as your agent, but make up your mind. Fail at the exchange and write a check to the IRS next April for $95,000 and, feel this. Imagine what it's like, an IRS $95,000 on April 15th. How will that make you feel? That sucks. You probably want to overpay for this property. If you really like the property, you think it's a good investment in the long run, paying, $25,000, $30,000 more over, what perhaps you think it's worth, might be worth it as opposed to writing a check for $95,000 to the IRS.
So high level, which kind of goes back to mistakes you observed in the past. I'm hearing Carl is very strongly urging you not just to plan well in advance and ahead, but when you get into the trenches, because of the timing of all this, don't miss the forest for a tree.
Yes, exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
All right. So last question today for you, Carl. Whether someone is watching this at home and they're about to embark on their investment journey, or this is their 30th deal and they're getting into Central Texas real estate and they want to work with the best of the best, how can they get started with you, and where can they find you?
Oh, just give me a call. I typically pick up, and if I don't, I call back immediately.
And what's that phone number?
512-956-0908.
Okay, so Carl is a phone call type of guy. And then what is the website they can find you at as well?
www.ipx1031/Carl Pikus.
Perfect. And that's Pikus.
Correct.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Carl, thank you so much for your time today. I truly enjoyed hearing your story, learning about your history, your evolution, your expertise, and kind of you showing off your chops a little bit. I know you kept things simple today for the interview, but Guys, it's really simple. If you're just getting started or if you've been a seasoned investor and you want to work with the best of the best, the definitive 1031 exchange expert in all of Central Texas, myself and Carl, we're here to help. We come with a team and a world-class resume of expertise, and we want to make sure, especially in something of this big of tax savings, that every box is checked, all the deadlines are hit, and that are you thinking properly from a high-level standpoint. So Carl Pikus, everyone, another golf clap right here. Very appropriate with this beautiful backdrop. But Carl, just want to thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it so much, sir. Outstanding.
Perfect.
And the first big question on reverse exchange is, look, if you're going to do this backwards, if you're going to buy your replacement property first, that tells me that you've got the money to buy the replacement property first. So I can avoid that triggering of the tax by swapping.
The creative deferral method to make it not as painful up front, but thinking long term as they build wealth through these exchanges. By failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail.
Yes.
So we just finished with a super cool Q&A style podcast with the definitive 1031 exchange expert and someone we bring in every single time with our investor clients, Mr. Carl Pikus. So a couple big takeaways from you guys in the video today. Number one, when you work with the best, when you work with myself and the Sealy Group, right, you're not just getting a one-man show. You're going to get an army of industry experts, and we're going to bring in outside specialists to ensure that you get the most amount of money for the least amount of time and the least amount of hassle. That's number one. Number two big takeaways from the questions and the conversation with Carl, right? The old Ben Franklin quote, if you are failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. If you're failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. And so when you're an investor, when you're thinking long term and you're thinking about building wealth and how to legally avoid those capital gains taxes, you have to start early, not at the end of the first sale. You got to start early. You got to get the top real estate broker and the top 1031 exchange expert involved. And you got to start having those executive meetings early on in the process. And the third big thing, right, that you heard from Carl, don't miss the forest for the tree. Don't miss the forest for a tree, right? A lot of clients, a lot of investors, as they're in it, right, and they're up against the gun, they have to check all the boxes to legally qualify for this 1031 exchange process. They're unwilling to go a little bit more for the property to save a ton more in capital gains taxes. And that's where having a team of world-class advisors can help you out, not just in the upfront preparations, but when you're in the middle of the heat, when you're down in the dirt, when you're in the trenches and emotions can be running high, this team can keep you grounded. So my name was Dallas, right? We had Carl Pikus today, 1031 exchange experts. If you found value, if you loved what you saw, if you loved what you heard, click on the like and subscribe button above, right? Stay tuned for more videos. We're coming live every single week, and we'll see you next time.